The most intense arguments on Johnny Carson's Tonight Show were not always scripted comedy bits or clever verbal sparring. They were raw, unplanned moments when egos clashed, tempers flared, and Carson's stage transformed into a battleground of personalities under the hot glare of late-night television lights. For 3 decades, Carson reigned as the king of late night, the arbiter of wit and charm, and while his cool demeanor often kept the show running smoothly, he was not immune to conflict. Behind that Midwestern charm was a fiercely intelligent man with little patience for disrespect, and when guests crossed the line, he never hesitated to strike back with razor-sharp words or icy silences that could cut just as deep. Some of the most unforgettable arguments came from actors and comedians who mistook his generosity for weakness, only to find themselves on the receiving end of his legendary temper. One infamous clash occurred with comedian Don Rickles, whose entire act was built on insult humor. While Carson and Rickles were actually close friends, Rickles once broke Carson's prized cigarette box during a guest hosting stint. The next night, Carson stormed onto the set while Rickles was live on air, mock furious, as he demanded, "Dude, you have my box." Though the moment was played for laughs, insiders knew Carson's anger was not entirely an act. His irritation was genuine, even if wrapped in comedy. Other times, the tension wasn't funny at all. In the 1970s, Carson famously butted heads with Joan Rivers, his longtime protege who rose to fame as his regular guest host. Their friendship disintegrated in 1986 when Rivers accepted her own late-night show on Fox without telling him directly. Carson felt betrayed and never spoke to her again. And though their feud played out mostly off-air, the bitterness was so profound that Rivers was permanently banned from The Tonight Show until decades later. That falling out remains one of the most dramatic ruptures in late-night history. Carson also clashed with executives and politicians. He was never afraid to press guests with uncomfortable questions when they dodged too much. His sparring with then-presidential candidate Ronald Reagan in the early 1980s showed. Carson's sharp edge challenged Reagan on economic issues with a biting wit that left the politician visibly rattled. Other clashes were more personal. Famed insult comic Buddy Hackett once argued with Carson on air after feeling that Johnny wasn't giving him enough space to shine. Hackett snapped back, Carson cut him short, and the segment turned into a cold standoff that left the audience in awkward laughter. Even more intense was Carson's icy treatment of guests he personally disliked, such as singer Wayne Newton, who accused Carson of making disparaging remarks about him behind the scenes. Newton confronted him directly and, according to reports, threatened him off camera, a tension that lingered over their on-screen interactions. But perhaps the most intense arguments were not always visible to the television audience. Carson was known to feud privately with guests he felt had embarrassed him or broken the unwritten rules of his show. Cher once mocked him bluntly on air, saying she thought he was a real jerk. Carson, though smiling outwardly, never forgot the insult, and his frosty response in that moment revealed just how cutting he could be when pushed too far. Throughout his reign, the magic of Carson's arguments lay in their unpredictability. Viewers tuned in for comedy, but were often treated to fireworks of pride, ego, and conflict moments that felt dangerously real in a world of scripted entertainment. The most intense arguments on Johnny Carson's Tonight Show endure because they showed the truth beneath the laughter and applause. Late-night television was as much about power and control as it was about charm and jokes. Carson, the consummate professional, rarely lost his cool, but when he did, those clashes became legendary, shaping not only his image as a host who couldn't be trifled with, but also the entire culture of late-night TV that followed.